Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Life Empowered Living Room. My name is Celeste Cuffy. I am your host for today, and I am so excited to be here with my friend, my fellow entrepreneur, and my sister, Miss Kenge Adams.
Hello, thanks, Celeste. I'm so excited to be here today. Thanks so much for inviting me.
I am so excited. I got a chance to attend your event last week when you were speaking, and I did not realize that we had so much in common. So I'm really looking forward to this time today. But just as we're getting ready to get started, what I like to do is ask you some, I call them quick seven, fast
Mhm.
five, just a couple of rapid fire questions. And I'm very interested in hearing your answers to these questions. So are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. What
Okay.
is your favorite candy?
All right. So I really like gummy bears, like the not the Hasbro, whatever. I like the more organic, natural gummy bears, and anything chocolate. So
Anything chocolate.
yes, I do have a bit of a sweet tooth. So yeah, so I'll
I
eat that
love
pretty
that.
much all the time.
So, what's your favorite cartoon?
It's so funny. You said that something. The thing that just popped in my mind was Bugs Bunny. I don't know why. I don't watch as many cartoons as I did when I was little, but when you said that, I was like, oh, Bugs Bunny. I used to
Bugs
watch that
Bunny.
all the time. So, and Tom and Jerry, like the little mouse on the guitar is my favorite, like my favorite one. So, yep,
I,
those are my favorite.
those bring back so many
Yeah, I'm
great
kind of dating myself,
memories.
but yep,
Yeah.
those are the ones I enjoyed the most.
Okay, so now tell me this. So, if you got your favorite candy as chocolate and gummy bears, then you have Bugs Bunny as your favorite cartoon. Then, what
Huh?
was your favorite after school activity?
Right after school. Probably just hanging out with my friends. I did do like cheerleading and gymnastics, that kind of stuff after school. But I think because um my high school, I came from Racine and it was a small town, and so my high school got out before some of the other high schools. So I think just meeting up with my friends after school was really fun. So I don't know if that's the most constructive. I think just being involved in, activities and sports at school and then just kind of getting with my friends afterwards.
Well, that's really interesting because that really takes us really nicely into kind of our conversation for
Mhm.
today. If you were super social in high school, and I think of you today as being quite a bit of a networker and such, has
Uh-huh.
that always been?
No, actually, no. It's so funny. When I was little, I used to hate strangers, and I used to like, even in my own, I didn't say own family, but I would just be kind of the one in the corner. And I have pictures of me and all my cousins, they're all over here, and I'm just kind of like over here. And I think I'm really close with the people that I was close to in my circle, but outside and meeting new people, I've always had a struggle with that. And then I really didn't start getting out of my shell probably till, later in adulthood, where I just started to like venture off and do things on my own and meet people and, join different circles, whether or not I knew anybody. So it really was a conscious effort to do that. Because I remember probably about 15 years ago or so, I only had like 13 people on LinkedIn. Like I didn't talk to anybody. And then, so it's been a journey to really put myself out there. And then now I'm able to coach others on that too, because I know what it's like to just kind of stay in your bubble.
Mhm.
So I'm really trying to do that.
So now, what was the catalyst for that change, though? That's interesting.
So it's funny you say that. So when I moved to Milwaukee, probably about 20 years ago from Chicago, right after we got married, we lived in Chicago and then we moved to Milwaukee.
Mhm.
And I knew some people because I was from Racine, but I didn't know a lot of people. So whenever my birthday hits, I always use that as a milestone to try something new.
Mhm.
And so what I did was I started going to events by myself. Like sometimes people would say, "Hey, come to this event." I may not know people there. So I figured, you know what? I have a car. I'm just going to go. If I don't like it, I can always leave. And then the more I did that, the more people I met, and the more times when I started going to events and going to like, different activities, I felt more and more comfortable. So just every year, pushing myself to do something new, like go to a movie by yourself or eat by yourself, like just little things
Mhm,
you would think
mhm.
of that people don't really have a problem with. But if you're not traveling and you just on a Saturday decide to just do something on your own and go to a movie by yourself, that was something I normally didn't do. I figured you need people for that. So I think just being comfortable with yourself and doing things that you enjoy doing.
That's so powerful, and you and I both are married, and so one of the things that I often tell people is that I take myself to dinner all the
Mm-hmm,
time. I go to the movies by myself all the time because I wanted to retain who I was as a person, not
mm-hmm,
just as a wife, not just
mm-hmm,
as a mother, right? And so, what
mm-hmm.
are some other things that you've had to do just throughout, your journey of maintaining your own identity?
Yeah, I think yeah, just because like granted I'm more social and my husband, as you know, is more laid back. So I think just yeah, just being comfortable with doing things that I enjoy, obviously still making time for family time and
Mhm,
date night and all those things. But um just yeah, finding what interests you, joining groups, connecting with girlfriends. I think having those conversations, having that close network of friends, it's been really helpful in keeping your identity, especially
mhm,
as
mhm,
both of us are empty nesters, and so your most of your life is focused around your kids and their activities. So then now it's like, okay, I don't have as many activities. So what do I enjoy doing?
mhm.
And so I'm able to like do some of those things. And I also encourage my husband if he wants to do something, obviously, I may or may not want to do it. So it's kind of like, but then still be mindful of the other person and make sure that we spend time together too.
So now, you just mentioned inadvertently the stages, right, of life
Mhm.
where when you're married, you're focused on being married as a couple, then you introduce children, and then you focus on, raising the kids and all of the things around the kids. And now, we both are empty nesters. And so we're kind of discovering some of those things a little bit more of who we are and what we like and really tapping into those things. But
Mhm.
talk about your career journey as you
Okay.
also navigated your life journey.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So that's kind of what I was talking about when you came to my talk was like my career journey. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of times, um, initially my husband was in school. So I supported him through his journey, and then we had kids when we were really young. So I took a series of jobs because I felt like, either I had to or
Mhm,
that's what I
mhm,
felt, comfortable doing. And then later on, as the kids got older, I was able really to focus on me going back to school, going back to grad school,
mhm,
and then eventually launching my own business. But I think, sometimes when I was younger, when I was probably in my middle 20s, early 30s, I took a job that was close to my house, and that I could pick up the kids from school and then didn't have to travel a whole lot. But
mhm,
then also you look back and you're like, wow, could I have done other things? But
mhm,
now I have that space, I would say, where I get to do all the other things that I
mhm.
may not have done when they were younger too. So just trying to balance both and be mindful of, family growing up. But now it's like, okay, these are the things that I'm interested in, and
Mhm.
this is what finds me joy and I'm passionate about doing.
So Michelle Obama says it like this, which is
Hmm.
exactly what you said. She says, you can have it all, just not all at once.
Hmm.
And so, can you talk a little bit about your prioritization process that you went through in making those decisions of, I need to work in close proximity, I need to do
Hmm.
certain things because of the stage of life that I'm in?
Yeah. So like for instance, like my husband, like for instance, we got married when he was in medical school. I would just say he was in med school. So he had crazy hours. And so we had, a kid while he was going through school and another one. The second one, Max, was born during residency. So it's like, okay, I just did a full-time job to kind of hold it down while he went to school.
Mhm,
And then after that, he, when we moved to Milwaukee, then he balanced his career and said, okay, I'm not going to work on Fridays. He took jobs where he only had to work 4 days a week or half a day Fridays at the clinics or the hospitals he was at to kind of balance out those hours.
mhm,
And then once my kids got older, maybe about 10, 15 years ago, I went back to grad school, and he was like, okay, you were there for me in my journey. Now I want to be there for you. So then luckily we had a small village with our parents and close friends that could help the carpool and all that situation. So I could still, obviously work full time and go to school. So, and then now as an entrepreneur, he was like, okay, you've been there, you've done all the things. So go be great, go do what is exciting for you. And granted, also my kids are out of the house and they're gone on. So I feel like it's a time where I can finally shine. So same kind of thing. I think it's a balance. It's like we want to balance family time. We want to balance those evenings at home. I want to be there, be present when they're young. Same thing with him, even though he has a busy job. And then yeah, so now we have the flexibility where on Fridays, if we want to just zip out of town or go somewhere for a long weekend, we have that flexibility. So I think like you were saying, Michelle Obama was saying, it's find the right time that works for you, not worrying about other people's timeline. Because sometimes I got caught up where I was like, sometimes I felt like everybody else was trudging way ahead of me and I'm still far behind, and I have all these things that I want to do but haven't done. So I just had to focus on what's my timeline, which is fine. Like maybe I do it now, maybe I do it later, maybe I don't do it at all. But just focusing on what's right for you, and that seems to help ground me into making decisions and doing things that work for me.
I love that. Now let's shift to the entrepreneurship, because I'm so curious to what are some lessons? I have a lot of questions about your entrepreneurship journey, but let me just start with this one. What are some of the bigger lessons that you've learned in being an entrepreneur, especially in comparison to being in traditional corporate America for so many years?
I think the biggest aha for me was that, for 20 years, I worked for companies and other people, and you always have constraints because you always have either budget, time, politics, whatever. But when you're an entrepreneur, you don't have that. It's only thing holding you back is yourself. And also I kind of changed my mindset, because I would think strategically for the organizations I was a part of or for my job or whatever, but I never used that muscle I developed over 20 years for myself. Like, who do I know? What do I want to do? How do I connect the dots? How do I build a strategy to help my business? And what relationships do I have? What relationships do I need to strengthen? So I think kind of looking inward and becoming like that, even if you have a current job, becoming like a entrepreneur, where you kind of put together who are those people in my circle or that I need to develop relationships with that can help me get to where I want to be. And so when I decided to make the big leap, I just basically called up a couple of girlfriends that I knew and was like, hey, do you need support? And I think also putting yourself out there, like not being afraid to lead and then not being afraid to support. So there's other women who have businesses that are very, very successful. And I said, hey, I just want to learn from you. Do you need help? Do you need support? Same thing when I have something, like I reach out to friends like you, like, hey, I need your help. I know you're great at this. Can you help support me? And I just think building that network of people and supporting others and being open has been helpful, and just planting those seeds, because maybe sometimes I think people feel defeated if they don't get a certain client or somebody, whatever. And I don't look at it that way. I just say, this person's come into my life for a reason, and maybe it's not today. Maybe it's for me to connect them with somebody else, or maybe it's for something from 3 years down the road. Because there's people that I'm now doing business with, and there's some nonprofits that I've worked with now that I have contracts with that I met years ago when I had a full-time job doing something else. So I think just really keeping your your network fresh and just really staying connected to people and supporting them and showing up, I think has been really helpful.
So one of the things that you said though is, figuring out where you want to be.
Hmm.
And, using and I'm paraphrasing, kind of
Yeah.
leveraging your relationships and resources to get
Hmm.
there. But what are some things that you've done to help you get to that point of
Yeah.
just figuring out what you want to do and where you want to be?
Yeah. So I think it's just like anything else. It's like trying, if you think life is like trying different jelly beans or ice cream flavors, since I like sweets, you know what you don't like.
Hmm.
So when I first started, hanging up my shingle as a project manager, I would say yes to anything. So I'm like, oh, well, that's contract or that's an opportunity or whatever. But then I realized the type of projects I enjoy doing, the
Hmm.
type of projects I don't enjoy doing, the type of scale I like to do. And then, and then you talk to others and then it's kind of like you're shuffling through to figure out, okay, this is what I enjoy doing. And the
Hmm.
things that I don't enjoy doing, I either say, is that something that I want to do? Because I know, for instance, this is just an example. Like today, I was on a different call and I was talking to another contractor, and he does a lot of things that I do, but he also writes grants.
Hmm.
And then someone's like, yeah, Kendra's not into grants yet, but maybe she will be. And then I thought about it and I was like, do I want to be a grant writer? And like for me, no, it doesn't bring me joy. Like, not saying there's nothing wrong with being a grant writer, like we need grants writer, and I've written
Right.
grants to help support myself and other organizations, but is that something that I want to do and find joy in? And I'm like, and I told the other contractor, I'm like, you know what? We have a lot, but I think I'm going to leave that one up to you. So all those clients, obviously, like that's you. So I think finding those things, those um, those differences
Hmm.
that like you enjoy doing. But see, I love doing, say PowerPoint presentation, strategic planning. Like these are all the things that I love to do.
Hmm.
And maybe they hate doing PowerPoints or they hate doing whatever. So then those are things that I can compliment them on. So I think finding things that and trying different things, just like trying all the different flavors of jelly beans and finding, okay, which ones do I enjoy doing? And
Hmm.
then the ones that I don't, either find people in your circle who enjoy that piece, if that's something you want to offer as a service, or just, being okay with the space of saying, that's not something that's for me. And
Hmm.
I think that was the challenge too, was to say, learn how to say no.
Yep.
Because after like I'm going on my fourth year of my own business, I'm finally able to say no because I realize saying no to this makes space for what I'm supposed to be doing and
Yep.
where I'm supposed to be putting my time. And even if that time is filled without a project in this particular spot, I can use that time for, personal growth, going to a conference, working on my website. Like I can always find things to fill that space, but
Hmm.
being okay with that versus doing things that don't bring me joy.
Hmm. Absolutely. And that's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And, you hit it right on the head when you talked about all of this requires a bit of a mindset change to
Mm-hmm.
say, because even when you work for a company, they give you the projects and you don't necessarily have the option to say, oh, I don't want to do that one. It's
Mm-hmm.
your job to do what they've given you to do. And so now being in a place where you have the autonomy to
Mm-hmm.
say no or yes, it definitely feels different, right? Um, it actually is different. And so with the mind shift that you've had, over your career, moving from organization to organization, what I was going to tell you is I didn't know that I'm shifting here,
Yeah.
that you worked in banking. And I
Mm-hmm.
worked in banking too for like 10
Okay.
years. I was like, oh my God, we both were in
Yeah,
banking
yeah,
too.
yeah. We went through
Yeah.
all the consolidations, all the Y2K, all the craziness.
I was there for all of it. Yeah, we were waiting
Mhm.
for for the world to crash when
Yeah, yeah,
Y2K
yeah.
hit.
Hmm.
It's like,
Hmm.
oh, everything works just
I
fine.
know. I stayed home like in the basement. Like I'm not going nowhere. Yeah,
It's so funny.
yeah.
But my question though around that was now that you think about how you evolved, how you've matured, how you've grown, how you've shifted, what would you tell your younger self?
Mhm. so funny. Oh boy. I was thinking about that. I'm like, ah. I think the younger, it's so funny because the younger self was actually, like I was saying, it's like actually shy,
Mm-hmm.
very insecure. Um, and it was funny. I was always like, I always had these friends that were always, I thought, we're cuter, smarter,
Mm-hmm.
funnier. And I was, even in college, I was like the friend. So my roommate was so dynamic. And then she's like, oh, if we're going out, I have a friend, and that would be me. Like I'd be like the friend. And I
You
think,
would be the friend, yeah.
no, but I think just being more confident, learning confidence,
Mm-hmm.
self-assurance, um, knowing that you don't have to have all the answers all the time.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I would just say confidence. I think that was the thing I lacked probably the most growing up,
Mm-hmm.
was just confidence and just um and knowing what I wanted. I think I just kind of like, I looked at some old videos of me like when I was in my 20s. I think my grandfather and my dad had a video camera or something. And I'm literally looking like I'm just in another world. I'm just like, just going through space, just whatever. And I think being more mindful, knowing what I want, and asking for what I want,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
would I would tell myself that. So that's kind of what I. It's so funny. I put that into my kids, especially my daughter too. I'm like, you know, be your own person. Live your life. I think I almost did it like too much. She's like really like,
I got one of those too. Yeah.
but she's just like, I look back at her and sometimes I'd even tell her, I'm like, wow, you are so much more dynamic, so much, you're living your life, you're living in the city. Like at 27, you're doing way more than I was even doing at your
Mm-hmm.
age.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that's why I try to mentor other young women and young men too. Is just like, in my son, he's like, go after your dreams, like dream big. I just think that I was kind of told, old school, go to college and get a job. Like I didn't know what that meant. Like I didn't know what like I didn't tour a lot of. I mean, I went to a couple colleges for tours, but I didn't like travel out of state to tour. I didn't go on different places, have these different experiences as much as I probably would have liked to as I look back. But I think that's what I would tell my younger self, is really just to go for it, dream big, and yeah, and not let people put you in a box or that kind of thing.
So now let's talk about confidence a little bit. Full
Mhm.
transparency. I had another person that I interviewed, and she talked about the same thing,
Mhm.
just in terms of being confident. What
Mhm.
did you do to develop your confidence? How did you get here?
It's so funny. I did not become confident, like confident in my abilities until I was 40. So I'm over 40 now.
Mm-hmm.
But when I didn't go back to grad school till late 30s, like 39. So I had a
Mm-hmm.
goal by 40. I wanted my master's, so I kind of did that. And so for grad school, I actually, I don't know how, praise Lord, but I got into Northwestern. So I was
Mm-hmm.
in grad school at Northwestern, and just sitting, and this was, so basically it was a new state because I'm from Wisconsin, lived in
Mm-hmm.
Wisconsin, went to school in Wisconsin. So I'm in Chicago, and we're doing, these case studies,
Mm-hmm.
and I've had all these experiences, and I'm just making A's. Like I
Mm-hmm.
graduated with like a 3.9, and that's the
Mm-hmm.
highest GPA I've ever had in my life. And then I would say something, and the whole class would be like, "What was that?" And I was like, "Wow!" And it was crazy. It's like at that time, it took. I don't know if, and I shouldn't say I needed validation from others, but I think just knowing that these people are from all over the world,
Mm-hmm.
they're all these different people, and this was like a leadership management one. So there were some,
Mm-hmm.
older seasoned people, I'll say, and some younger people in this group. But just to like be able to hang with them, and I read the papers I wrote, and the case studies and the clients I interviewed. And I luckily at the time, the job that I had let me use some of the real products that we were developing in
Mm-hmm.
IT and be able to do some research around that. So meeting with the senior level execs at my company, right? Working with my clients, working with people at the university, and knowing that I could do it, and I just excelled at it. And I think that was really the first time so that I felt comfortable, like really super confident, where I'm like, you know what, I can do this. I'm making A's, I'm writing cases, I'm doing all these things. So
Mhm.
unfortunately it took a while. It's been a journey to feel like that. But that was really the first time where it just really clicked, where like, you know what, I am smart. I can do
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
hold a full-time job and have kids and all the
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah.
but then
No,
you gave me talk about a village. So I
yeah,
had my husband and my parents and in-laws and support, obviously, but that helped too.
absolutely. And I think, what I have found too, again, a very similar journeys, you and I, is that I know for me specifically, I had to um, tie, for so long, I tied my confidence to my competence of the things
Hmm.
that I did.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until I had lost my job back in 2012 where I went through this activity of writing down all of the things that I accomplished
Hmm.
and like literally looking at it like you did this, you went to school while being married, while
Hmm.
working a full-time job, while keeping good grades. You were active in ministry. I used to write plays for my church. I mean, just all of the things, right? Listing all the
Hmm.
things that you're doing. And that was like a turning point for me because I had to also remember that even if I didn't do any of those things, I was
Hmm.
of value, right? I
Hmm.
was capable, even if I didn't perform it. And so we've talked about all of these things that have helped make up your success. But can
Hmm.
you talk about how you handle failures?
Yeah. And I think the failure was for me, I don't know, it's funny because I don't know if it was a failure, but I know like the first time, I'm gonna say the first time I actually failed at something, I'll say when I was young, how I handled it compared to when I was older, I say more seasoned. So
Mhm.
I remember back in high school, I had a job at Chi Chi's restaurant.
I remember
I was
Chi-Chi's.
a hostess at Chi Chi's, right? I was like, I don't know, 15 or 16 or something, probably 16. And this is before online scheduling, and you had to like
Mhm.
go in and check the board and see if you're working or whatever. And so I remember being somewhere with my parents and I hadn't checked the board. I don't know what I was doing, but I hadn't checked the board in like a couple of weeks. So I probably was supposed to work and didn't know. So I went in there and I checked the board, and then I came out and I started crying because they're like, well, my parents were like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, well, I don't work here no more. Like I lost my job. And I was like, oh no. And I just cried. I didn't think about like what I could have done, what I should have done. I didn't go back in. I didn't talk to the manager. I just accepted basically failure, went in the car, cried, and went home. Like that's what I
Mhm.
did. And I think when I decided to start my own business, I loved the job. I loved the company I was at. Um, but then I just felt like the place, the departments, and the politics just didn't jive with me.
Mhm.
So, and I felt really, really bad about it. I felt like no matter what I did, it wasn't appreciated. And I same kind of thing. I felt like, woe is me. I don't know what to
Mhm.
do. I felt overwhelmed. So I decided, you know what? I'm just gonna do me,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
But instead of like, I don't want to say like feeling bad and trying to like go back and trying to do all these things, I just kind of reflected more at myself
Mhm.
and what are those things that I enjoy doing. And I
Mhm.
basically had to, I'm going to say detox my mind,
Mhm.
but I think because I spent 20 years just grinding and just doing all these things for
Mhm.
others and trying to work, and I needed space for me. So then I just started not only my own job just to see what I would do, but then I just started like mindfulness. I just started
Mhm.
walking in the neighborhood. So I would, get up and do yoga, go for a walk, And then started having coffee with people that I knew, learning
Mhm.
about what they do, and started my journey. So instead of feeling some kind of way about, just working or whatever,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
use that to kind of regenerate myself to figure out what do I enjoy doing? Kind of like
Mhm.
we were talking about projects, like pick the projects and the people that I enjoy working with.
Mhm.
And I still connected with my old company. I still have lots of friends there. I have nothing against that. But I felt like this was something personal that
Mhm.
I had to figure out for myself. And so that's what I started doing.
So that's important. And when you think about this journey that you're on today, let me ask you this question. If
Mhm,
your current season right now was a
mhm,
chapter in a book, what
mhm.
would it be called?
Um, it's so funny you said that. I'm like, okay, I'm thinking learning to dream. I think
Mm.
learning to dream because one of my good friends and also a fellow mentor, and she's helped me through a lot of all of this and entrepreneur and all the things. And our whole journey, I talk to her literally every day. I already talked to her this morning. Is about dreaming big,
Mhm.
being bold. And so now, like, literally, like, we just make up stuff. Like, we literally are like, why don't we go to, like, literally, like, I could say, you know what? I have an idea to be in Texas and I want to do this. And then
Mhm.
we make it happen or we do this.
Mhm.
So I think in just dreaming large with no limits
Mhm.
and figuring it out because a lot of people like they'll come to me and ask me about like starting their own business but they're like
Mhm.
I don't have any money, I don't have any capital. I'm like, you don't have to, depending on what you do, but especially for a service type
Mhm.
thing, you don't need a big brick and mortar, you don't need a big fancy site, you don't need, I mean, you can just start with like LinkedIn. If you need business cards, like I just printed some at my dad's house, he had a good printer, like, it's just start small
Mhm.
and then but dream big. So figure out how do you connect those dots to where you
Mhm.
want to go,
So
and then
now,
finding people to get help you get there.
and that's what I want you to talk about. Can
Hmm.
you? So I am big about who's in your circle, who's
Hmm.
in your space. I'm really
Hmm.
big about having figuring out who the right people are that need
Hmm.
to be around you. And so when you talk
Hmm.
about your mentor who you can just literally dream big with and they partner with you in making those dreams a reality.
Hmm.
What are some things that you've done to find those people? And then how did you identify that they were right for you?
It's so funny because I think a lot of these people are right under your nose. They're people, a lot of times they're people you just don't ask. So I was actually talking to my cousin yesterday. She was at my event too, and
Mhm.
she does a lot of coaching and leadership, and she's tied to a university. And
Mhm.
I'm like, you're tied to a really large university in Chicago. University has lots of partnerships, lots of organizations that donate to them. Why not find out who some of those partners are and get some warm connections at at your university, like people in the
Mhm.
administrative office, maybe they can connect you to some of these partners. Or she's also part of a large church. She's a minister at a large church in Chicago. I'm like, who are those organizations that support the church because she wants to do leadership development? So reach
Mhm.
out to those organizations who support some of the things that you're also supporting.
Right,
Like
right.
I think they always say, just like I know, like when people try to sell insurance, they're like, start with your family, and you're like, I
Mhm.
don't want to
Mhm.
ask my family for stuff or, spend money.
Mhm.
But it's not so much like it's just people who have those connections or maybe adjacent to someone
Mhm.
in your circle.
Mhm.
You'd be surprised, especially if that's something that they already do. Like
Mhm.
I have a friend who works for a different university in Chicago and they have a neighborhood initiative, and so I'm doing a project in that neighborhood. So I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, you're already giving money to this particular neighborhood in Chicago. I know someone who's doing a project in that neighborhood. Let's connect. And they're
Mhm.
able to help donate some funding to support an event for that
Mhm.
thing. So sometimes it's
Mhm.
just an email. Sometimes it's, so I would say just start with people that are in your network and then
Mhm.
ask, hopefully, who to connect you. But have a specific ask. Like, don't just like I tell my kids too, like, don't just go to someone and say, you hiring? Like, you need to do some research. Like, you need to find out, like, what company are you trying to target? Where are they giving money to? And how can you help with their mission?
Mhm.
Don't just cold call them and say, hey, you want leadership training? Like, come with a plan, and then that makes it a lot easier to get to the yes.
Mhm. Mhm. So, Kenji, this has just been amazing. I'm like pausing because I'm thinking, and I'm all of the things are happening in my head right now.
Mhm,
And so the
mhm,
time that we've spent together thus far has been amazing. And I appreciate that you are giving tangible nuggets of what people can do as they are looking to, as I would say, live life empowered, right?
mhm.
Um, but what I also want to talk about is, you know, your you've mentioned your kids. So I want to talk about not only your today in terms of your family, but I also want to look ahead to your tomorrow.
Mhm.
What do you want your what do you want your legacy to look like? What do you want folks to say about you?
Okay. Well, it's funny. So my legacy, I guess, is twofold. So it's funny how you said that, because initially, I wanted my legacy to be something that was, inspirational, and they can see, like, for my kids, see where they came from. So actually, the wall behind me is my legacy wall,
Mhm.
and I put it together with my kids after my son graduated from high school, and it has, like, my degrees, my husband's degrees. It has all my daughter's college degrees, and a space for my son when he graduates in May, for
Mhm.
him, with his degree. So they can see that you come from a long line of people who valued education and valued school and valued learning. So that's kind of like my legacy from, like, an education, but from a personal legacy, it's just that I want somebody that showed up, who did something positive while
Mhm.
they were here,
Mhm.
and um was just a good person. Like,
Mhm.
like, I just, like, like, when you see people, like, I unfortunately I had too many friends pass away recently,
Mm.
and I've gone to too many funerals, as I'm sure a lot of you have been. And one of them was one of my sorority sisters, and I just saw the love. The place was standing room only of just the sisterhood was
Mhm.
there, not
Mhm.
outside of her family. So I just want people to just know that somehow I touched them. And so we were reflecting, even as a group of girlfriends, we were like, she physically touched everybody in this room in some way. And they felt like they really wanted to show up and support her. And so for me, it's just basically saying, whoever is in my realm or in my
Mhm.
sphere or strat, whatever, I want them to know that, they matter, and I show up for them, and I care about them. And sometimes people laugh at me, and my girlfriend will say, like, you're not the most emotional person. I can count how many times I physically see you cry, even though you say you cry. I don't believe it. Your tear ducts are dried up or something. But I want people to know that, like, on the inside, I really do try to support people and honor them. And I just pray that, at some point that they're better, because I had been in their life. It's some way.
So now you've talked about how you would show up for others, and that is the legacy, though. So that was the question that I asked.
Mhm.
But I also want to ask you, how have you been clear on making sure that others show up for you in a way that you need it?
Oh, it's funny. Um, you know, and that's something that I think we all have to work on. I
Mhm.
think it's like I always pass around other people's flyer 2, 3 times, and I'll pass out mine maybe once. So, but then now I'm trying to be mindful of, if I have something, do a personal reach out and say, hey, I would love for you to
Mhm.
come join me here.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that's, I'm always looking for, obviously, growth opportunities. And especially as a project manager, you're always in the back. So you're
Mhm.
always pushing out the information and putting everybody else kind of up front and making sure things run and you're kind of in the
Mhm,
back.
mhm,
So I think just trying to be more visible and just sharing with others that here's an opportunity, or being mindful of inviting people to lunch or scheduling coffees, or just trying to stretch that muscle more too. So it's something that I obviously am always continuing trying to do.
mhm, mhm. That is so cool. That's good. And I asked the question. I just was on a podcast, I think a couple nights ago, and we were talking about building deeper relationships. And
Mm-hmm,
sometimes we talk about being there for others, but we're not always clear on how people should be for us, or even if we
hmm,
want them to, or if we're even willing to be vulnerable enough to say, "Hey, I'd love to see you," or
hmm,
"Hey, I have a need right now.
hmm,
Can you help me with my situation?" So that's super powerful to do that and to say that. And so while I've enjoyed our time together, we are, getting ready to wrap up here. So I want to ask you, the theme for or the tenets that Life Empowered Consulting Services has is embrace, empower, and elevate. When you think about those words, what resonates most to you? Which one of those words, and what does it mean to you?
you have brace, empower, and elevate. I really think I like empower and I do like elevate. I think they both um, connect with me
Mhm,
because those are two words that I'm um, probably more in sync with now in this
mhm,
last 5 years, kind of, becoming an entrepreneur and going through that cycle than
mhm,
either before. Sometimes I felt like, I mean, I'm not saying like things just happen to you, but I think
mhm,
you just kind of get into this hamster wheel of you get up, you go to work, and things,
mhm,
you have a good day, a bad day, whatever. But I feel like now I'm in the process of my life where I can become more empowered, and
mhm,
it positively or negatively, if something happens, it's something that I did or didn't do. So
mhm,
I feel
mhm,
more empowered now.
mhm,
And as far as elevation, I feel like every year I look at, how can I elevate either, the work that I do, the visibility that I do, and I just look back at where I started.
mhm,
And, 4 years ago, where I was just like, I don't know, just starting, hanging my little shingle, doing whatever, to like launching programs in other states and building relationships across the country and being able to ask to speak, that kind of stuff. Like
mhm,
that's new for me.
mhm,
As far as an entrepreneur being asked to do that versus working for a company and someone asking you to do that. I
mhm,
feel like it's a little different because sometimes when you're in a company, you're in a role, so you're asked to do something because you're in that role and that's part of your job.
mhm,
But I think when people ask you to do things as an independent person, as an entrepreneur, they're asking because they want to hear what you have to say and you
mhm,
become that expert in that field.
mhm,
And that's, I think, is also very empowering. So it's like everything you do as an entrepreneur, you did it because you scratched it, you like,
mhm.
you lit it, you fired it. So I think just being able to um, be in that role and be someone who can be perceived, as leaning more toward that other side has been really empowering for me.
So now, with that said, and I know that, you not only, because I know you, let me say it that way, because I know you, not only are you about um, empowering yourself, but also empowering others. And so, as we're wrapping up this call, and thank you again for your time, what is one thing, if you were going to give our listeners one thing that they could do immediately to live life empowered, what would that be?
I would love to. I think people, like I was saying when I did my speech, my little talk the other day, was that I think sometimes people have an itch, like they know that they want to do something, and they don't.
Mhm,
Sometimes they may not know what it is, but they know maybe there's an aspect of it, even in your day job. Like even
mhm,
if you don't particularly like all the projects, but you love one point, like you love training, and maybe that's something that you want to do more of. Is kind of write jot down the people on your dream team. And there are people
mhm,
either inside your company, outside your company, who are people you admire, who are
Mhm.
people are doing what you would love to do, and then try to either, if you talk to them, find someone who knows them, maybe go to a workshop where they're
Mhm.
at, get to
Mhm.
see what
Mhm.
they do and learn from them, and then hopefully get a connection and let them know what your desire is, what your passions are, and what your interests are.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think just jotting down those names or those roles, and then physically doing the work of like, because sometimes I run into people too who I'm like, well, you should reach out to this person. I'm like, well, why don't you just call them? I'm like, no, like you should build that relationship.
Right,
Like
right,
I'll
right.
do their warm transfer, or I'll say, here, you really are into this particular type of technology or whatever.
Mhm.
Here's a conference on that. You know, you should go to that. You should meet people who are in that field, who are
Mhm.
doing something that you're interested in doing. So I
Mhm.
think people should start embracing the things that they're interested in doing and
Mhm.
finding out about it, and then physically getting to know people in that space. And then
Mhm.
hopefully they can kind of grow into the things that they're were passionate about doing, even for their job or even in their spare time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Kenji. This has just been absolutely amazing. I have enjoyed all of our time together.
Okay.
This has been, as I said, terribly powerful. So I cannot wait
Hmm.
for the listeners to hear and to glean all of this great information that you've offered on today. So thanks again
Okay.
for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Celeste.
It is my pleasure, really my pleasure.